Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Lunch Bros Podcast, episode number 130. I am Brendan. Bellator 281, Logan Storley versus Michael Venom Page. Lyoto Machida, Fabian Edwards. Denise Kielholtz. Paul Daly making his last walk, and this taking place in London with two large, as far as popularity goes, English fighters made this event, fun to watch also from a distance just because the energy in the crowd was so good. We're going to go over all those things. Before we get started, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. If you like MMA, if you like podcasts about MMA, if you like hearing about MMA, discussion about MMA topics, I put at least one of these out every single week, more lately than ever. And then also I cover every single UFC event, Bellator, and PFL. So if you're into any of those, please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. It'll let you know when the next video comes out. And if you like this video, press the like button. Appreciate you. Cool. I don't know if you noticed in the background, I got some decor and also the ladder, the ladder that I used to put up that decor. Some giant tennis rackets, courtesy of my buddy Charlie. They're like 4 foot. They're made for they're not even demo units. They're made for tennis stores to put them up in the window. They're not made for home use, but they look really cool on a wall. So I'm glad I got them. It's pretty damn cool. Thank you, Charlie. All right, Michael Venom Page taking on Logan Storley. So this fight was for the interim welterweight belt. Page shouldn't have the belt anyway. Storley gets the decision win here. He gets the decision. It's a split decision win. One of the judges had it going 48-47 in favor of MVP. One of the judges had 49-46 in favor of Storley, and then the other one had a 48-47 in favor of Storley. So let me, before I break it down round by round here, because, honestly, there wasn't that much action, but this is mixed martial arts, and there was stuff to break down, right? There just wasn't a lot of... This fight here, let's put it in perspective. This fight took place mostly on the ground, and there wasn't a ton of striking, but it was way more action-packed than the Rose Namajunas fight last week, okay? That shit show that made it like my eyes want to puke, that was way worse than this shit, okay? But I want to read this quote from Scott Coker when interviewed about this fight afterwards. This is not something I usually hear from Coker as far as his opinion. This is very Dana White-esque, and you can tell that he was in favor of MVP winning the title, mainly because of his style, and also he's a homegrown talent, and he's been a huge fan of his anyway. Anyway, Page shouldn't have got that win over Lima last time. We all know it. He really didn't deserve it, but they fought in England, and maybe the crowd gave him the pop that he needed. Here's the quote from Scott Coker, the president of Bellator, right? So he says, listen, Page knew Michael Venom Page knew he was fighting a world-class wrestler. And honestly, I think Logan has some improvement to do myself too, because you can't just lay on somebody and think you're going to win and score points, because that's not MMA. That's wrestling. So to me, it's like, if you're going to wrestle, I think you have to continue the wrestling, and you have to continue to either try and submit or ground and pound or strike. There's a difference between what you see on the wrestling mat and what you see in the cage. So to me, all these fighters, not just what you saw tonight, but they're the very highest level of what they do. But they owe it to themselves, they owe it to the audience, they owe it to the fans, and they have to continue to get better at the disciplines that they're not strong in, right? And that's what I would tell Logan if he was here. Hey, you're a great wrestler. Now it's time for you to become a great striker or a great submission fighter and get your submission game together. Basically, Scott Coker didn't think that Storley won the fight. He was unhappy with his performance and unhappy. I read that quote. Normally I don't quote fighters or anything, but I thought this was poignant because Storley did exactly what he needed to do. So in the first round here, I want to set the context, and I'm going to go round by round, and then I'll give you my breakdown on both what he said and the fight. Actually, just we can go over wrestling and MMA. So Page was taking the center of the cage early, and he was pressuring Logan against keeping his bat back to the fence. Storley got his first takedown, though, at 350, and there wasn't a lot of damage that MVP landed. I think maybe he landed a couple jabs, maybe like one right hand, but nothing crazy, nothing that rocked him or did any real damage. And then that takedown at 350 was the end of that first round, because the rest of it was Storley on top, trying to improve position, trying to get Page down. And to Page's credit, he had good, grappling defense, like the butt defense, where he would stay on his butt. He looked a lot like Czech Congo last week, in a different position, right? Czech Congo was on a knee, MVP was on his butt. But he just refused to put his back to the mat, and Storley couldn't get a good position on him. Doesn't matter. This first round was pretty much all Storley for 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Like, he did land a little bit of damage, Storley did, during that time, and he was constantly trying to improve position. Didn't get stood back up. 10-9 Storley. Second round, Page was pressuring, using a jab, bouncing well, and then Logan grabbed him at 255. So because Storley didn't get him until later in that round, 2 minutes and 5 seconds had gone, so not quite half the round, but MVP stayed on top, had good position as far as cage control goes, and he did a little bit of damage. It was hard for me to give that second round to Storley because he didn't do any damage with his top pressure, and because MVP had done a little bit of damage on the feet before it went down there. So I actually gave the second round to MVP. I had it 19-19 going into the third. Third round, it was contested with MVP on his butt the entire time against the fence. And yeah, he was landing punches, but Storley was landing the same amount coming back at him. And because if you guys are both landing punches and they're about equal in damage, which I guess they were kind of because they're both arm punches, and one of the guys is in better position, that could lead, to talk about like how you would score that. If you're in a better position and you're landing the exact same punch as someone else, you're in a better position to take your offense and implement that in the way of getting a finish in the fight. Whereas the other person is doing exactly what you're doing, but they're not in a good position. So they can't advance to win the fight from that current place that they're in. They're going to need to do a reversal or something else. So all things being considered, that third round, in my opinion, went to Storley, 29-28. MVP was able to stay on his feet a lot longer in the fourth round and do enough damage to outweigh any grappling that Storley did. I had it tied going into the fifth round here, okay? And then the last round was all Storley. He just imposed his will the entire time. I don't know if he even took any damage in that fifth round. And he was able to drag MVP down to the mat in the more towards the center of the cage. So MVP wasn't able to do the cage butt defense. 48-47 Storley on my card. Okay, it wasn't a complete blowout when it comes to the scores because, MVP did win 2 of those rounds on my books. So, was it a close fight? I'm going to just say no. I don't think it was a close fight at all. I don't think there was close rounds, right? The second round would be the closest one, but that would be in favor of Storley. That's where, I would give him the 4 rounds like the one judge did. But as far as a close fight and being competitive in every single round, I wouldn't say so. I say when it was on the feet, it was clearly in the favor of MVP, but he didn't really do that much damage either. So all this shit. So now we're going to get into what Scott Coker said. So you want to talk about how Storley needs to advance in his MMA. Okay, I'm just going to say this because I like Scott Coker most of the time. Fuck you, Scott Coker. Fuck you. You know why? If MVP was advancing in his game, he wouldn't get fucking taken down and stay there. He'd get up. So I can flip that script and say the exact same fucking thing, only now I'm going to criticize the guy who actually was losing those positions, not the guy who was winning them. Okay? Now, I am not a fan of a guy who does lay and pray. I don't think Storley was quite doing lay and pray. He wasn't panic wrestling to avoid the striking. He was trying to get advanced position, and he was trying to do stuff. It's just MVP had decent defense once it got to the ground. He couldn't stop the takedown, although I think he did stop 1 or 2 of them. One of them, he olayed his way out of the way, like a bullfighter, and then did a little taunt. That's cool, but he still got taken down anyway. That was the second round, which is the one that I gave to MVP. But if you're going to criticize the fighter who won because he won through wrestling because he's not well-rounded enough to strike, fuck you. Michael Venom Page did the same thing. He's not well-rounded enough to grapple. Fuck off. What Scott Coker is really saying, because when he says this isn't MMA, that's bullshit. This is exactly what MMA is. I'll tell you right now, wrestling is the most dominant martial art, period. Period. If you take 1,000 fighters versus another 1,000 fighters, right? So you have 1,000 fights total. If you have an even number of specialists or the style of fighting, right? So let's take 10 different styles, whatever it might be. I don't care. So 100 of those fighters each have, actually, no, it would be 500. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Out of those 1,000 fights that you have, right, all other things being equal, wrestling is going to be the dominant winning force in 1,000 of those fights. Okay? More than 50% of those fights are going to be dominated by wrestling. You know why? Because wrestling and wrestlers, well, wrestling allows you to, wrestlers get to dictate where the fight takes place. They get to remove a variable. I get to remove a variable from this game that has an insane number of variables that involve grappling, striking with all different, wrestling, submissions, striking with any different implementation you can think, on the feet, on the ground, in the air, off the cage. There's so many variables. But if I can put you on your ass, I just took away, I don't know how many of them, right? I'm taking away 3/4 of the game. At least half of the game I'm taking. It's unbelievable the amount of disrespect that Coker just threw at not just Storley here, but at wrestling and MMA in general. Yes, you should be looking for the finish. Yes, you shouldn't be laying and praying. I don't like that. It's not my favorite thing. And if I had to pick a fight to watch, I probably wouldn't pick a wrestling heavy fighter who is not looking to finish, who's just looking to lay on top and eke out round by round. That's not what I'm going to watch. But if you're going to sit here and criticize the guy because he's not going for submissions or he's not doing ground and pound, why don't you criticize the guy who can't get off his fucking ass for 18 minutes of the fight? What about him? And when he wasn't on, as far as Page goes, I don't think this was a bad fight, by the way. I don't think it was a horrible fight. So I'm not on the same wavelength or page as Scott Coker here. But you can also criticize MVP. How come you didn't get the finish? I mean, when you're on the feet like that, you can't just be bouncing back and forth looking to jab. You should be going for a finish and throwing fight-ending punches. Or you're trying to outpoint the guy. You can't win fights like that. Do you understand? You see how stupid that sounds when you translate it to striking? It's asinine. And the fact that this is coming from Scott Coker, of all people, this is ridiculous. It really drives me up a wall. I can't believe that this guy is taught like that. This was said like this. I've seen way worse fights. I've seen way worse mismatches. I've seen fighters do horrible things when it comes to winning a fight. Horrible meaning horrible to watch and clearly lazy as shit. I'd rather watch this shit than a guy who just stands there and throws one big punch every 3 minutes and then maybe gets a knockout some of the time. Yeah, it's exciting when it gets a knockout, and people only remember that in their brain. But while I'm watching that shit, it's boring. It's fucking boring. It just is. Fights that don't involve fighters actively trying to engage drive me nuts. And this was not that. MVP was trying to engage on the feet, and Storley was trying to engage in the grappling. I do not hate this fight. I'm not mad at either fighter here. I think MVP has improved, right? I think he has. I think they've done a good job developing him. Right now, I'm going to give credit to Scott Coker and Bellator here because I think that MVP has become a legitimate welterweight contender. I really do. I think his grappling can improve. Obviously, he's a striker first. I think if he learned to be aggressive off his back and kind of use those positions to get back to his feet, I think it would make a huge improvement to his overall game. But his striking is top notch. I mean, as much as I don't think he won that last fight against Douglas Lima, I think he at least kept it close enough to where, a decision going his way isn't it's not the biggest robbery in MMA history. Do you know what I mean? And he's able. Also another legitimate welterweight, a guy who could be a champion in any given time in any given organization. So, as far as this fight goes, I didn't hate it. Congratulations to Logan Storley. Scott Coker, you're just fucking flat out wrong. You are. You're wrong. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The way you said it, I mean, if he doesn't come out and retract this statement or clarify it, I mean, this is empirically wrong. It is objectively incorrect. There is nothing right about what he said. It's fucking stupid. It's asinine. Any other adjective you want to give it. It's fucking dumb. Okay? So we're going to move on here to Lyoto Machida versus Fabian Edwards. I think Fabian Edwards is Leon Edwards' brother. They look very similar, and Leon Edwards was in his corner. Maybe they're cousins or something, but they look very similar. Lyoto Machida was taking the center of the cage, pressuring Edwards a little bit. They're moving back and forth. Fabian Edwards caught Machida with a left hook and then followed up with some punches and put him out and got the TKO finish in the first round. Good for him. I think Lyoto Machida maybe should be calling it a career pretty soon here. That's 4 losses in a row. And get to Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, Gegard Mousasi, and Fabian Edwards. Fabian Edwards is the lesser of the last 4 opponents that he has fought, and he had those 2 losses were split decisions. So they're close enough against Mousasi and Davis. And then Mousasi's the current champion. So, 4 wins in a row, 4 losses in a row. I think it might be time pretty soon here to start calling it quits. Maybe give him one more fun fight against another veteran, and then Machida maybe hang up the gloves. Love Machida, love his style, fun guy to watch. Just getting a little long in the tooth here. All right, Denise Kielholtz versus Kana Watanabe. So this fight started out with Denise landing a huge left hand and then throwing some big hooks to put. Okay, so Watanabe got stumbled a little bit, but she didn't go down, and she wasn't didn't have baby deer legs, right? She wasn't doing the stanky leg. And then Denise also had an armbar attempt for 2 minutes, but did no additional damage. And Watanabe took top position, laid down some damage of her own, and went for a rear naked choke for the last minute of the first round. So it's hard to know who won that first round, but it doesn't matter. Watanabe ends up getting the finish in the second round anyway. But another interesting thing that happened, it was in the second round. They were in a 50-50 position where the legs were tangled up. They're playing footsie in the second round. And then Denise ended up kicking Kata in the face and got a point deduction, so she was going to lose that round pretty much regardless. And then they're rolling around. Denise, again, gets top position for a couple seconds, but then got caught in a triangle, and Watanabe got the finish there. So it's weird fight. It felt weird watching it. Skill level was there, wasn't bad or anything like that. Well, then stop eating it, you moron. Aries. He's eating a stink bug. Those things are everywhere, and they're freaking annoying. All right, let's talk about not necessarily. It was a decent fight with an exciting ending. Let's put it that way. Paul Daly retiring, taking on Wendell Giacomo, and getting the KO finish here in the second round. So this was his retirement fight. He called it out beforehand. This will be his last fight in MMA. Grappling from Giacomo, putting Daly on his back, and then he took the back for 3 minutes. He lost position, but then he scrambled for a leg lock in that first round. The first round was all Giacomo, and then it was going. The thing is, okay, first of all, the other announcer, not what's his face, not John McCarthy. So not John McCarthy, but the other guy was talking about how good Daly was doing in that first round. Like, wow, how good was Daly doing in that first round? Get the fuck out of here. The dude got destroyed in that first round, okay? I'm not taking anything away from Daly. This is a criticism of their commentary, and I have a huge problem with this when it comes to Bellator. I'll talk more about that at the end here. But I also want to focus on Paul Daly retiring in the career that he's had. In the second round, it was more of the same, and then Daly got out just the same way he did in the first round, right? So he got out of the guard, or he got into the top position in the guard, and then he got out, stood up, and then this time he found a right hand that knocked out Giacomo in the second round, pretty much out cold. It was a fucking great left hand to the body, right hand over the top. Beautiful finish for Paul Daly, and doing this in London and doing this to, end his career. What a way to go. He's an English fighter, obviously. What a way to end. And we're going to, I want to go a little bit over like his career and some of his notable wins, kind of like his career path and where he sits, in my opinion, as far as, like what his career is all time, right? Whereas, total joke versus a GOAT. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. It's in the middle. But here, John McCarthy, when he was interviewing him, says, "You made everyone in this arena hold their breath until you decided to explode, get out of there, to explode and get to finish." Pardon, McCarthy? I know you're trying to, make the guy feel good and talk about that stuff, but you don't need to outright lie or be ridiculous and hyperbolic. He decided to explode and get the finish. Really, that's what happened. He was just waiting for his opportunity. How about he was getting dominated and out-grappled for an entire round and got out-grappled again for the start of a second round and then worked his way out of it and managed to get the finish? Okay, let's not act like it was a part of Paul Daly's game plan to sit on his butt or his back for 2.5 minutes of the first round and then fight off a submission for the last minute and then immediately get taken down in the second round and then get back up and get the finish. Get the fuck out of here. You want to talk up your guy, that's awesome, but don't tell me that bullshit. Don't come at me with, "Oh man, this was all part of his plan," because that's what you're saying. And it's fucking wrong and stupid. So shut up. God, it's just like, you don't have to lie. Like, this fight and that finish was amazing enough in itself. You don't have to come out and make it more than it was, or make Paul Daly out to be some fucking wizard that he like actively sits on his back until he's ready to win the fight. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, good grief. But enough of that. Let's not be too negative here. Paul Daly, I was not a fan of him because one of my first experiences of him was actually when he lost the fight by getting out-wrestled by Josh Koscheck, and then after the fight, throwing a punch at him and then getting kicked out of the UFC. So that was one of my first experiences with him, and I really disliked him for that. And then when he lost to... we'll talk about that in a second. He's not my favorite fighter. I actually do not like Paul Daly that much. It's just not... He never really evolved in his game, and he's had kind of a nasty negative attitude pretty much his whole career, and I'm never a fan of that shit. I don't like when people are just like whiny. So as far as looking at his MMA career goes, some notable wins here. I know like a loss to Pat Healy, but he has a win over Jorge Masvidal. Where is that? Jorge Masvidal. Okay, so he's got a win over Dwayne Ludwig back in 2007. Like, we're talking, back in the day here. He has a loss to Jake Shields, but I'm bringing up like the guy, like the notable people that he had fought. Here's his loss to Josh Koscheck. That puts him in there. He's got a win over Martin Kampmann. Back in the day, that meant something. He's got a win over Jorge Masvidal. This was not, it was in Shark Fights, not in any major organization. Got a loss to Nick Diaz, a loss to Tyron Woodley. Those are in Strikeforce. And then who else did he beat? He's had some really good wins. Yeah, the loss to Douglas Lima, loss to Rory McDonald, and now a win against Brennan Ward. That's an okay win. Lorenz Larkin, that's a good win. Win versus Eric Silva, that doesn't mean much. A win versus Sada Wad, that doesn't mean much either. The fun fight versus Sabah Hamasi, that was great. He has a loss to John Fitch and Michael Page, and then lost to Jackson. And then his last win against Wendell Giacomo. So if you can notice when I was going through these win-losses here, kind of who he loses to and usually who he beats. So if you notice, a lot of those wins aren't coming against the best of opponents because I didn't mention them. And then, remember famously in that fight against John Fitch when he was losing, he was being held down by John Fitch, and then he was saying, he was booing him. He's like, boo, this is why you're losing fans. These are boring. Boo. Then get up. Get up. You're trash talking as you're being dominated because you want to stand up and punch the guy in the face. Then get up. Good grief. But I think that kind of sums up Paul Daley's career, to be honest with you. He's just, he's a striker first. He throws big, heavy hands. He's got that crazy left hook and blah, blah, blah with that. But also, when it comes to beating the best competition, when he fought, for all the shit he talks about grappling, when he fought MVP, that's what he did. He tried to wrestle him the entire time. So you want to talk shit all you want. That's what I mean. He's kind of a negative guy, and that's why I wasn't a huge fan of him. As far as his career goes, he's definitely not the worst fighter. He's not. He's actually pretty damn good, right? He has some wins over notable opponents against good people in his career, and his losses are, he's got a few losses to dingleberries, but most of his losses are to quality opponents, right? So when it comes to where he sits on the hierarchy of welterweights, first of all, he also had problems missing weight a lot. He used to not make weight too. But, he's somewhere in the middle. He's not just a flat journeyman. He's an upper tier journeyman. He really is, right? And in Bellator, that makes you a ranked fighter just because of the depth that they just lack. So overall, Paul Daley's career, not bad. Not bad, guys. If he's got some highlights that are worth watching, especially against lower tier opponents, but again, against some people, that aren't bad. He's got some notable KO finishes over worthy opponents, and if you go back and watch his career highlights, that's pretty much all you need to do. There's not much to dig into here. He's never really going to be a champion the way he fights. Never really advanced in his career, but he didn't take any back steps either. He's just a consistent, high-level journeyman. He beats the people he's supposed to beat, and when it comes to upper-tier opponents, he usually, he couldn't get over the hump. Every so often he would, surprise you and get a finish here or there. But really, that's what been the name of the game is for his career. So, congratulations to Paul Daley on what I would consider a great MMA career. 44, 18-2. A lot of those losses are coming to high-tier opponents, upper echelon guys, and 35 knockouts. It's just a lot of finishes. So you can say whatever you want about the caliber of his opponents, but when he's supposed to win, he's finishing these fucking people. So congratulations to Paul Daley on a great career. Wishing nothing but the best going forward. Okay, let's talk about the very first fight on the main card, and then we will call it with this. So Luke Traynor taking on Simon Byung. This fight was kind of weird. So Traynor was being bullied against a fence. Oh, you piece of garbage. So Traynor was being bullied against the fence again in that first round, but then he took the back for 3 minutes until he lost position. Then he scrambled for a leg lock. Oh wait, that's not him. That's the last round. He was being bullied against the fence, but reversed it, and then he got the back of Byung. And then Traynor with a great great end of the round, riding out the back and going for chokes and laying out a little bit of damage. I gave him the first round 10-9. So Byung ended up getting the decision here because the second 2 rounds were just, Byung rocking him and then trainer eventually trying to get into a grappling position but not doing any damage and not outdoing anything that Byung did to him earlier in that round. So in the second round, super fucking sloppy. Byung got tired and ended up giving up position at one point and then got position again. Trainer looked freaking tired the whole time. And then the third round was more of the same. I don't want to harp on this too long. This is a fight that doesn't need a lot of breaking down, but, when I'm seeing these relatively new fighters, because, Byung's 7-2 and Luke Trainer's, Byung is 8-2 and Trainer's 5-1 here. These are relatively green fighters. And yeah, Simone is 31 and Trainer's 26, so they're not super young guys or anything. It's just when I see guys like this getting tired in the second round this earlier in their career, dude, you need to do cardio. You got to work on cardio. I mean, it's the one thing you can for sure control all the time is your cardio. That's one thing you have 100% control over, right? You can handle it. There's plenty of ways to increase your aerobic capacity and your anaerobic capacity. There's plenty of ways to do it that don't involve whatever joint is agging you that day. There's plenty of ways to do it that won't increase injury risk. There's plenty of ways to do it while you're cutting weight. There's plenty of ways to keep your cardio up, and because it's probably one of, if not the... So cardio isn't a martial art. I mentioned earlier about wrestling being the most dominant force in MMA. As far as skills go, right, if you had to pick one skill... not skill. One attribute. Okay, if you had to pick one attribute that, in my opinion, outweighs everything else in MMA, because when it comes down to it, it's the one thing that is going to get you the most wins over time. It's cardio, right? If you have wrestling and cardio, you can be a world champion. If you have wrestling and cardio, you can beat everybody. Well, what if you don't have a good chin? Okay, well, you're not taking them down. They get tired. You don't. That's what I mean. That's how dominant those two things are in MMA. Wrestling being a skill and cardio being an attribute. Now, obviously, just because you have good cardio doesn't mean you're going to win every fight. You have to do other things with your cardio. And anybody with massive power can knock out somebody at any given moment. So MMA is crazy. There's lots of variables. I talked about that earlier. But these two guys, dude, you're both under 10 fight. You're just in, just under 10 fights in your career, and you're coming in here, and you can barely stand up or make good moves in the second round. You got a fucking problem, guys. You got a problem. You need to get your shit together, Carol. Okay. Anyway, we're going to call it with that. This was a better Bellator event to watch, in my opinion. I had more fun watching this than I have in the ones in the recent past. Outside of a few fights here or there recently that have been very good, the cards have been kind of stinky. Just it is what it is. Oh, also on the prelims, there was a buggy choke submission that wasn't a buggy choke. It was a triangle submission from side control, but all the outlets are saying it's a buggy choke. It's not. Anyway, I appreciate y'all for making it this far. It means a lot to me. If you did make it this far, just hit the subscribe button because you get more of this stuff. So I do this all the time, every single week. I cover almost every major event, and I do this. And it'll let you know, hey, the new video's out. It'll come up in your subscription stuff. And then if you made it this far, come on, man. Just take the mouse and bring it down there, and then click like. You made it this far already. Just hit the like button. It really does mean a lot to me, and it lets me know that you guys are actually interested in this content, in these videos. So I will be covering the UFC event later this weekend. So if you're watching this and you're like, hey, where's the UFC one? I got that. It's either posted up or it will be posted up. And then as far as everything else, if you don't want to watch that stuff, I understand. Cool beans. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Love y'all.